Hi everybody, welcome to our very first group critique. I'll be holding a group critique every week throughout the 5.5 weeks, so we'll have a total of, I believe, 6 critiques, maybe 7, depending upon the assignments in week 5. 6 for sure. And I typically do the critiques the day after the assignment is due for the character. So it's really a good idea to aim to get your work in by the deadline, especially for the caricature project, so that you can be involved in the group critique. If you're not able to submit by the deadline, I'll post feedback if I'm in the classroom after the group critique. Typically, I usually am one more day, and I'll post you some text feedback, which is going to be helpful. But as you probably can understand, it's really good to be part of this group critique. So the first assignment that we've already been completed, most students have completed that already, was the Photoshop exercise, the classroom in a book exercise that we did. And that assignment through the submission Dropbox, and I provide text feedback in the comments. And if you look at the announcements board right now, you'll see I have some tips on how to view that feedback, and then you're going to take that feedback and you're going to revise and submit into the final submission area by the end of the week. So the same thing with this feedback, but instead of the comments area, it's through this group critique. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say about the group critique. Okay, yeah, let's move on to talking about the character project. So the character project is, over the whole entire class. Every week we're going to be doing a new version of it. And so this is where we're doing the sketches part, where you're generating ideas. So let's say you chose Garbage Dump Dan, for example. You'll have 4 different sketches showing different ways that you came up with of creating Garbage Dump Dan using objects. And then so next week what you're going to be doing is choosing photographs for your character, for all the different parts. So whatever parts you have listed in your chosen sketch, you're going to choose photographs to go along with that. And that's for next week. Let's see. So the most important thing here is that you've got 4 different ideas for your character. Let's say, again, Garbage Dump Dan, 4 different sketches. And you're going to choose one of those sketches for next week. Now, I would just want to say that throughout this class, this is a very organic class in terms of making changes. So let's say you choose one of your sketches and you decide, hey, I want to make some changes to that sketch, or maybe I want to combine some sketches. Like I like the legs of sketch 2 and I like the head of sketch 1, or the whatever I'm developing. That's really okay to do. So just keep thinking it's all about creating a really great character by the very end. And so you're going to, make changes throughout. So again, the sketches may change, and from the original idea, and that's just fine. And so the purpose of this sketch is to just really be creative with the sketch and have a lot of different ideas, because typically as designers, if someone says, hey, just give me one idea, we do that, but typically we like to do more than that, because oftentimes the first sketch is maybe a little bit rigid, or it's not very creative. So the more the ideas you generate, typically the more creative you get through that process. And that's typically why we as designers like to have more than one thumbnail or one comp of a design. It's just because it gets those juices going when you don't, when you have a bunch of different ideas to develop, you go, oh, what the heck, I'll just try this and see what happens. So you tend to be a little bit more flexible with your ideas. Okay, so I think that's it. So we're going to look at the sketches now, taking a look at them. And the main thing that I'm looking for is just that every part of your character is built out of an object. That's really the most important thing at this phase, because that is what you're going to be using with photographs. So next week you need to have photographs of objects, like something that a camera took, and so the sketches need to reflect that. As I mentioned in my notes here, drawing doesn't really matter so much. about your drawing skills. Just is it clearly communicated? That's really, everybody has a different drawing style. It doesn't have to be realistic to be a good communicator. So don't worry so much. I know in other classes we actually do study drawing, and so the parameters are different. But in this one, whatever you came up with, as long as it's clear and communicates, that's all that matters. Okay, Melanie, Jennifer, and Ashley, I'm going to start with yours. In all of yours, I think you've got a really good understanding of the assignment where you're working with every part of your character is made out of an object, which is really, again, really, really great. So let me just go through here. So I've kind of just sort of pulled which ones I think potentially I'm just drawn to the most. Now that doesn't mean you have to pick them. It just means that, based upon what I have kind of learned about character design through teaching this class, these are the ones that I think potentially could have a really good result. One of the things I've noticed is that having a really solid torso, whatever that torso is, it doesn't have to be like, typically people do humanoid types of characters like with arms and legs, but that doesn't have to be the only way to think about the character. It could be more like a bug or some kind of sea creature or something that flies. There's all kinds of ways to kind of build a creature that we can recognize as a creature, and that's one of the main things, is that we start to get a sense of all of the objects coming together into something that we recognize as a living, sort of breathing creature. So this one I think is super cute here with the idea of the onion ring. You've got arms and legs, and you've made the facial features out of different objects. What you'll find, everybody, if you did a head, which most people do, and you've added features, that you can sort of evaluate as you go through whether the features are needed later on. Sometimes they really work great, adding the features on top, like eyes and a mouth, whatever you're doing. Sometimes they can be actually removed, like where the object itself, whatever you've chosen for your object, actually reads really nicely as a head. And sometimes the features can be a little bit, a little bit cluttered because it's such a small space. But that's something you can kind of look at later on and sort of decide. I loved what's happening here with the hair in this one. You've got hair and a lot of... So pizzas, I didn't choose this one because I have noticed that working with a pizza slice, as cool as pizza slices are, tends not to be a very good character choice, because pizza slices are very flat. They have a lot of kind of stuff going on, and they tend to kind of not read as a very form-like, like some of the other things that you've chosen. So just a note to everybody, if you're thinking about working with pizza slices, I would say most objects work really well for this assignment, but pizza slices, for whatever reason, doesn't. I love the long body in this one. I think that's kind of cool, kind of, sort of skinny and weird looking. And the hair on this one. So again, you can sort of mix things up, but I would say at this point, I kind of like just the kind of big body of this one, and that's also why I chose this one, Jennifer, because I really like this big body, and also the banana arms, the head, the daffodil eyes. I thought that was really cute, and the flower eyes. And I love this for the top here, the carrot with like the top here, all those, and sometimes like adding things onto, well, that could work, yeah, so that could be a possibility too. I was going to say sometimes adding, like making the whole body out of one object can be a little bit challenging to make it read as a body, but that might work too. And I love the flower head here, but I'm sort of leaning towards this particular one as, maybe the most kind of clear at this point. I might kind of do something for the feet here, like maybe a little feet, or maybe it could hop on something or roll on something. So I might kind of think about how it might move. That's something good to think about, everybody, is how will your character move? Like, does it sort of like jump, or does it fly, or does it walk? Does it, how does it roll? Because you definitely want your character to have an obvious way that it's going to move around. And then Melanie, for this one, I actually chose this one here. Let's see if I can make it a tiny bit bigger here, because I like the body shape here too. I really like kind of the um, the obvious body shape and the toaster head. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. I don't know if I see any arms or uh, features for this one, whether you chose what objects were for that one. That's the only thing I might change here. You might not need features. Again, think about that. It's like that maybe your character doesn't need to have um, a mouth or eyes. Maybe it can work really well without that. And that was my favorite one. I feel like these other ones don't quite read to me quite as a character yet. Like they seem, it's like the kind of the magic of taking objects and making them into something that looks like a character. I think the head is starting to look like a character. The body, actually, I really like this little, what's happening down here. Is this like a little wheel? One leg standing, tire. Yeah, I think that's actually a cool idea. Um, yeah, so this one's might be a good choice. I think that there's a lot of possibilities there. So that could be something to work with. Um, so maybe 1 and 4, 1 and 4, or a combination of those. Okay, so that's what I'd work with here. So you guys are going in a good direction, and um, feel free to, make any, you know, possible revisions here if you want to. But overall, I think these are working well. Okay, Intisar and Madison. All right, both of you have some very cute designs here. Um, so Madison, I would say that, well, you've heard my thing about the pizza slice, but I love the rest of this body, like the peanuts, bananas, the legs. This one's super cute with the pumpkin. I don't think I've ever had a student who did a pumpkin head, and I can see how, you know, um, you could find, even just in Google Images, you could find a really good example of a pumpkin with a cutout, like somebody's already cut it out, and then bam, you get the face, which would be so cute. So this looks good too. And, I would say maybe this one doesn't quite look character enough. Like it's maybe, I could see that it might be, let's see, French fries. Maybe the French fries could be, it's almost like the strawberries is maybe not quite working yet, but maybe the French fries with this head could work, and then maybe there could be a face here. I don't know. So the purpose of this is really, it doesn't matter if all of your sketches work or don't work. It's just about getting one good one or two, some two possibilities. So don't worry about, for anybody listening, don't worry that if one of your sketches isn't quite as good as the other ones. It doesn't matter. You don't need to revise to make them all great. You just want to make sure that each of them fulfills the requirements, and that you get one good one. And of course you can revise if you feel like you could want to experiment a little bit more. I would just say with the strawberry, you just want to make sure that eyes and mouth are made out of objects, right? So, because we're not going to be able to use anything else besides objects, so everything you draw needs to be represented by an object. So you could take these out too. You could just kind of get rid of the face and just leave it as a potential head. Um, this one's cute too. I love the pear. That would make a really cute body and the legs. So again, with the face here, find an object to make these features, or you can just remove it. That's okay too. I would say the same thing for you in Intisar. If I'm saying that incorrectly, just kind of give me a phonetic pronunciation. I'd really like to be able to pronounce everybody's names correctly. So if I am anybody's name, just let me know. I'm very happy to be corrected on that front. That's a really good thing. So I would just say, so the main thing with yours, you've got some really cute sketches here, is that you want to make sure that everything is made out of objects, and that includes the face as well. So let's see, for example, let's see what this head is made out of here. Strawberries, so a strawberry head. So you would want to, in this case, get some features or take it off. I'd actually probably just recommend taking it off. So take off all of the faces here, or rebuild them. Uh, that's the most important thing here. Let's see, sunflower seed head. Yeah, so what's the body made out of? Pitcher plant. Yeah, those are really cute. And you've got a lot of movement in your character, which is awesome. That's something that we'll talk about more as, we build the characters later on. But, in Photoshop, one of the great things is that you can actually do some really amazing things with objects. A photograph of a flower or strawberry, if you want to kind of, make some changes to it, we're going to be learning how to do that. Um, Using a technique in Photoshop called puppet warp. So in your character, really, when we get to that lesson, pay special attention on how to do that. Maybe, experiment with that because I think that would be something that your character, you'd want to do with your character and everybody else too. I think that would be a really, can be a really beneficial thing. What are the legs going to be made out of? I'm not sure if do I see a label with that? Legs and the feet, so you might want to touch that up a little bit, add some labels, anything that is needed here. Okay. Okay, Amanda, so you're doing Terrible Toys Todd, sounds like, right? um, okay, so something to think about, and this is for everybody, your character name, that's what we have to go on from this week. Terrible Toys Todd or Garbage Dump Dan or Garden Glitter Grace. All of these are giving you information about the character, in terms of developing the concept. And, Garden Glitter Grace, what does she do? Is she kind of glittering around? I think she naturally becomes kind of glittery, not necessarily actually glittery, but, just by the nature of that project, she ends up looking quite, kind of gardeny, For Terrible Toys Todd, is that right? Let me get back here. Now I'm kind of confusing myself. Yeah, Terrible Toys Todd. One thing you can think about is how are you going to make him look terrible? Like he's kind of maybe a menacing toy figure. So that's something to think about. And, over time it can develop, like maybe he's holding like in my previous class, somebody was holding, had a kind of cute, sort of very cute figure, but it was holding a sword and it had very kind of terrible, like kind of scary looking text, something we'll develop later. Or maybe, the character itself is really kind of scary. But in some way, you can sort of think about that. With yours, I would say that the main thing, this was already starting to look a little kind of terrible. Maybe this one too. So the main thing is I don't know for sure what all of these different things are made out of. And let's face it, not all of us are realistic drawers. So what you want to do here is you want to make sure that every part is labeled. Like you mentioned it in here, which is great. Label it on here too. It's like if you're showing something to a client, you really want the client to be able to understand immediately what you're showing them. So you don't have to like send them a separate email and tell them what's going on or kind of call them on the phone. You want them to be able to look at your drawing and go, I get it. So like, for example, an easy way to do this is to just take a simple arrow. You can do this, you're just with your pencil, an arrow, and then label it. And it's good also to label things really clearly, like kind of print things. If my handwriting is absolutely terrible, so print things out. Maybe yours is beautiful, but anybody else listening, if your handwriting is not so clear, like it's, and it's a little struggle for other people to read it, just do something else, like print it out slowly, carefully, so people can read it. So that's what I do for all of your characters. Like this to me looks like, is this going to be a chef's hat? What is this going to be? What is this? Is this a palm tree? Or all of the different characters. What is this arm? Is this going to be a specific toy? How is the head going to be made? That kind of thing. So each part, you've been listening. I would say in terms of just looking at the character's design itself, this is probably one that's getting closest to, I think, looking like a character. Um, this one, it's a little bit hard to see how this is a character. Maybe the arms should be the same or the legs should be the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, so this will be a leg, have the same as another leg here. That often can really help making a character, is if you build it symmetrically. Same thing with this one. It doesn't feel like it's quite coming together yet in terms of like the objects still feel a little separated, and this one does as well. It doesn't feel like a sense of what it is and what's happening. Like with this one, I might do like two um, This looks like a slinky, two slinkies, maybe two arms. Maybe the teddy bear will be the head, because I don't know quite what these are elements are. So I might revise a few of these just to touch them up a little bit, based on what I've talked about here, is trying to make it look a little bit more character-like, and then label everything. Hi, Amanda. So I think all of your different designs are really cute. Um, this one, probably number one, to me is closest to the idea of the project in terms of the different objects coming together. Um, and as you mentioned, yes, you do want to have one character name. Like in this case, this is Flippin' Food Fred. And so all of your sketches are going to be different variations of that. I might just go with Flippin' Food Fred. That's so cute. And just make sure that every object is made, like I've mentioned before, everyone has pancake head, chocolate chip eyes. What is the mouth going to be made out of? Do you need to have a mouth? Maybe not, you know. You can always change that later as we're going through. Um, we won't have the ability to add text onto our characters. We're going to add a name somewhere else. It's fine if you leave that right now, but just to let you know that everything's going to be made out of objects. And spatula hand. What is the body made out of here? Something, something. I can't read that. You might want to just touch up your lettering a little tiny bit. What the body's made out of. It looks like some kind of like squeeze bottle. Is that right? Like a ketchup bottle or something like that? Is that bacon legs? Yeah. Okay, so that's yeah, I think you're going, and I love what you're doing with your drawings. So just kind of create three more sketches, touch this one as per my suggestions, and then just follow along with three additional ideas for Flippin' Food Fred. And if you don't want to use Flippin' Food Fred, if you want to use, any of the other ones, just go right ahead. I want you to pick the character that you're most interested in. Just do the same, just do the same thing. Follow the same advice that I've had through the group critique for revising on a different character. Okay, Darby. Okay, Darby, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter whether you can draw or not. That really is just, my tips for if you don't feel like you can draw very well is to draw very slowly and have a strong line weight, kind of really inch along and just kind of draw that way. I think the thing that it's actually more than your drawing is harming your presentation is that I'm not, it's really hard for me to see your drawing because your drawings are so dark. So I would photograph these again, getting a little more light in your drawing so that you have more light, or scan them. If you don't have a scanner, a camera's fine, but just get a lot of light in the room or have, natural daylight, and then re-photograph these. It's actually, I can't really actually make out your sketches from here. Um, so I can only sort of make out body parts, like sort of overall, like there's kind of a round shape here with some arms and legs. That looks pretty good in terms of, I can see a pizza slice in here, so I'd avoid that. This one maybe is potentially good too. But I would just kind of revise, make sure every object, I mean, as I've mentioned a few times now, every object should be made out of a part. So make sure your labels are nice and strong. And instead, oh, I see there's a list here. So instead of putting the list here, take an arrow instead and just point to it, because that is so much easier than going through here um, and seeing it, trying to see that through here. Toast. Okay, that's a toast. Yeah. Again, you want, when you send your work to a client or your art director or potential employer, you just want them to be able to easily sort of see what you've done. So they go, oh, I get it. You don't want them to have to struggle to get your ideas. So again, it's not about your drawing. It's actually the other parts in a way, like your photograph, and then just making sure your writing is clear, close to it, maybe darken your lines a little bit. Um, but I would say that just looking at just the outlines here of what I can make out, maybe this one, because I like the idea of arms and legs, not in general, but just, I think it sometimes works a little bit better. So, okay, so I would keep revising this. Hey, Joshua, yeah, as I mentioned before, drawing doesn't really matter so much. The slower you can draw and kind of instead of, this kind of, sometimes sketching is a really good thing in certain classes, but in kind of these designs where you're trying to really show an object, sometimes actually just drawing, just like you've drawn up here, is the way to go. Just a single line, just kind of outline, makes it a lot clearer. Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of looks to me like maybe some hair potentially. So what I would think about is, let's just look through the rest of your sketches here. So this one to me is the one that's starting to look most like a character. And when we say a character, what we're sort of thinking about is something that starts to look like a body of sorts. It doesn't have to be a human body. It can be any type of like body, but you can sort of think of different types of bodies and you can kind of combine them. Like maybe it looks like sort of a bird with a person or a person and an animal, like, or so it can have four legs, or it can roll on things. It doesn't even have to have legs, but you kind of want to sort of think about how it will animate. And so this one to me is starting to look like the most to me like a possible figure, a possible character. This one's starting to get there, but it still has a feeling of being more like a plant in a pot. So, maybe you can sort of think about what would look more like. So this is a great body. These are, I love the idea of gardening gloves for feet. That's super cute. This maybe you can sort of think about maybe something that looks more head-like, like a head, like maybe something like maybe I don't know, a potato or a green pepper or like some kind of vegetable that's sort of round. So you can kind of think about sort of kind of building upon that. So like if you use all of the elements or a lot of the elements as being kind of um, similar, then it's harder for things to stand out. This is what is this one right up here? Old man's pipe. That must be a type of plant, eh? Again here, so I might kind of work with, what could you add for like a head that might look more like a head, and sort of think about two different, you've got a rake as feet for two, so maybe kind of instead of the rake here, maybe think about something else you could use. Sometimes having legs can help too, like two legs to kind of start making it look like a character. This one, I love the idea of this potentially being hair, but maybe you'd have something that looks like a head below it and then build the rest of the figure. So kind of think about that. Let me just see here. There's actually in my welcome announcement, let me just go there. So this is in the welcome announcement. These are a little small. I actually have a larger version if anybody uh, wants to see a larger version. I think I'll post that a little bit later in class. But so this is an example of one student's garden glitter Grace. And you can see here how the different kind of gardening kind of ideas have been turned into a character, like with a head. This was some type of flower this guy found, this student found, and then arms, and then sort of like a body, and then two rakes for legs. Again, you can just it's not about necessarily the objects that have been chosen here, it's more the building of the body. Does that make sense? You can see here too how other students have sort of built bodies to kind of create the sense that these objects are formed into a something that can, move and breathe and maybe do things. That's also a good way to sort of think about the characters. What does your character do? Like here, flipping food. Fred is flipping something. Terrible Toys Tanya looks like she's rolling along and she's got some kind of dangerous sort of things that are shooting out, you know. So, okay, well, I hope that's helpful. Just keep experimenting. Okay, everybody, let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing your revisions.